Hello, everyone. I hope everybody's having a good evening, considering the craziness out there. I hope this serves as a moment of pause for everyone. My name is Leighton Rodriguez Casanova. I am the co-founder and co-director of This Variable. And welcome. Tonight, I'm going to be talking with Chris Byrd about his work and his project that we had in our project gallery titled From Observation. And I'm going to start by introducing Chris briefly. Chris Byrd holds a Master of Fine Arts from American University in Washington, D.C. And he holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the Atlantic College of Art in Atlanta, Georgia. He lives and works in Miami. Chris's work is built upon a rigorous structured, geometric, abstract language that is simultaneously hard-edged and rational, yet fluid, lively, and emotional. With such an approach, the artist explores ideas concerning the making of meaning and the nature of existence. And without further ado, I want to welcome Chris Byrd. Hi.
Hi, how are you? Thank you. That was a nice introduction.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much. How's it going out there?
All right.
Good.
We're all doing our best.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is a good time to to kind of pause and sort of step away from everyone's only paying attention to election results right now, I think. So
I know, right? Everybody's like addicted, constantly refreshing.
Yeah, exactly. It's always more interesting to talk about art than elections, but we have to do that, right?
Yeah.
Good. It's great. Yeah, thanks for hosting this. This is super cool. I think I was, the show. I'm glad the show got extended a little bit, and I was kind of I was really happy with it, and I was kind of bummed to see it come down. I thought the show looked really terrific. So in Dimensions Variable Space. So so it's nice to continue.
I'm glad you were happy with it. I mean, it was really fantastic to have it.
Thank you.
That body of work is really great, and I'd like to really kind of dive into just the process.
I
mean, and I guess a little bit of background from. I mean, I remember we have been talking, but then I remember at least how the show came to be. When we went to visit your studio, and looking at your work, some of at least behind you, there's this there's a painting that represents your work in color.
Right.
And we were looking at those, and I remember just seeing, was it a piece that was in process, or was it just one? Was it more like a drawing and not necessarily on canvas that I had seen? I don't remember, but I remember seeing the black and white.
Yeah, I mean, there are things that there are things that. So all the work kind of starts out the same. I mean, there are things. The paintings start out as drawings. I need to kind of give myself this kind of structure to kind of move myself through the work. And so whether if I start something and I'm thinking that it's going to be kind of a full-blown painting or it's something that I'm going to kind of stop at through the kind of drawing stage. I kind of go into it knowing that that's kind of my objective. So yeah, you probably saw some things that were like, kind of somewhere at a kind of a midpoint of the process. And I think that the drawing has always been so helpful to me to figure out things with the painting, and the painting has been helpful to figure out things in they really I mean, they're so similar to one another, but they're the same time they're kind of very different, I guess, to me. And so it's just a way of I guess working kind of doing both things, even though they're so similar, they help me kind of define differences that I kind of feel about the two. So yeah, I mean, I guess one of the things that I think about with, we talked about this, and I kept sort of insisting like these are drawings because they're without color, and I love using color, and I have this like, it's this kind of like crazy sort of, like over the top, like I can't help myself, like I just keep, when I'm making a painting, I keep just sort of like, I'm like mixing color and like I have this really great, I don't know, this really great reaction to it. Like I'm salivating as I'm like mixing color on my palette. So it's like I have kind of a hard time, I guess, kind of reining myself in, and I don't know. I can kind of see the structure in color, and I don't know. I'll just kind of keep building upon what I'm seeing. But then sometimes I have to kind of, I think, kind of maybe rein myself in a little bit, and then maybe that's what I do with the drawing. And I again kind of go into, I'm thinking that maybe it's something that I need to work out, that I feel like I need to work out with the structure, because I guess is kind of a limited as the language is. I see a lot of different ways to, the structure gives me a lot, and I see a lot of different ways to go with the work, I think, moving in the future. And even though I mean, if you look at the work back over time, it looks very similar, but there's these sort of visual ideas that I'm kind of exploring, and so there's this really kind of like slow progression over the work over kind of a long period of time. And then that's what it, that's why I find, I don't know, that's what kind of keeps me going. There's as similar as they are from one piece to the next, I keep seeing, I'll make a piece and then I keep seeing, well, the next thing I'm going to try this other idea or whatever. So, yeah. I think I'm losing your audio here. Okay. Can you hear me? I'm having a little bit of a technical malfunction here. Yeah, sorry, I'm.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. It was my mistake.
There you are. Well, you're back.
It was my mistake. But what I was saying was, I showed the wider shot of yours because I wanted people to see the background.
And yeah.
And the color painting that's in the background. I mean, kind of, and that's what we were looking at when I was there. But really, I was so captured by and I know that you say that they're drawings, but there was washes on them, so it was kind of, there were layers of paint on the at least the one that I saw, and then obviously the ones that are in the show, which I'm going to show now, so we can kind of just have more visual with what you're talking about. Really had this kind of incredible layering to them. Yeah, that's what kind of attracted just the weaving of pencil lines and the layering of this drawing. Yeah, and then the washes that sort of hid some of those layers. Yeah, and how you pulled out the compositions from those layers. Right, and how intricate they are. Really, kind of, I get lost in them, and it's done. It just seems so daunting to me to pull out a composition from so many layers and so many lines and so and I want to kind of show, at least to show in some of the paintings, as kind of like you're just talking a little bit of the process and how it differs from the painting, because the painting behind you, for example, you don't necessarily see that layer. You see a kind of more finalized composition. Right. they have these certain hard edge shapes, but you don't necessarily see that weaving of the process.
Right. Right.
So let me just show here. I mean, this is obviously the layout here of the show.
Yeah.
And I want to kind of, you know, pull up. I mean, this is the larger piece.
Yeah.
In the exhibition. I mean, but yeah, I mean, it's that layering and that line. I mean, in some of those areas that don't have a wash,
right,
they're just so, you know, they're just so intricate.
Yeah. 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 You know, again, it's, I think they become, I guess there's this, I don't know. I mean, I think that just, you know, looking, I think that so much of the work that has taught me so much, I don't know, I guess I've always sensed that, that there was I guess a lot of work that went to it, and a lot of work that went into it, and a lot of the ideas that helped to construct the work. And I guess I needed, it seems, I guess it seems like kind of a lot of work, but I think I've just gotten used to the process, and I like that, you know, I like the sort of the work is very, I'm using this sort of this line, this width of line that doesn't change. It's always exactly the same. So the works end up being, on the surface, they're very flat, but I like them to have, you know, I like them to have all the structure to it. So I guess, I mean, I need all those layers of lines. I mean, I need to sort of build up, all that surface needs to have all that depth to it, I feel. So yeah, that's just, again, that's just part of the process. And then I guess, yeah, in the drawings, I like sort of leaving that evident. And I think that it is, I think when you see the paintings in person, I think that the structure that is kind of evident in the surface, and then the painting adds something, I think another kind of, you know, depth and layering to it in the way that, you know, paint behaves, rather than just, you know, the paint on the black and white things are just, I'm just using acrylic gesso, and it's just really kind of a process of erasure. But it does, you know, it does read like paint. And I think that you can totally, again, it's a way for me to sort of define the ideas for myself, of kind of what I think about drawing and painting. And then that idea too is really important. We didn't really, I guess we didn't really talk about the idea of like maybe framing a few drawings, because I do make works on paper as well. And those surfaces are a bit different too. I mean, the gesso feels a little bit cool, and the paper surface feels, you know, it's a little bit of a warmer white. And yeah, those have a different, you know, they have this nice kind of like, you know, deckle edge to the paper, and there's something, they feel a bit more, I don't know, a bit more, there's a bit more of like an intimate feeling with the drawings. But yeah, I mean, that's a nice thing. That would be a nice thing to show along with the, you know, the black and white, the paintings, the drawings on canvas, or as you said, the black and white paintings. So, and I'm open them to, like, I like them to be read openly like that, and they can be, painting is a different thing, I think, with everyone, and their views on it are different, and I think that's a beautiful thing about it.
I mean, you mentioned, I mean, because there is obviously a very rigid structure, but you do make references to a fluidity,
right,
organicness.
Yeah.
So, in a sense, like, do you feel like that you're so like your system is so, you know, constructed and tight and sort of rigid in the way that you kind of build you've built this kind of system,
right,
that you feel like you need to kind of towards a different part of the process kind of liberate yourself and kind of go into a more fluid state after you've laid down the groundwork?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's a really, no, I liked how you put that. I don't think that, no one's asked me that quite in the same way. You know, I think I've told you a little bit about early on when I chose to go to art school. I was considering studying architecture, and I like that I was starting, like I had some art classes and I had some drafting classes because I was trying to learn a little bit of that language, and I like the idea of using drawing as a system, and I like sort of learning how to use all these drafting tools. But I think that my art classes kind of won me over because I just like the freedom about it in the end. So yeah, I mean, I guess that just sort of follows along with my personality. Like I there's part of me that kind of needs this structure to kind of that I can sort of stand on, but then then I want to have like this total sort of freedom to sort of like wander around in that structure and kind of treat it however I want. So it's probably like akin to being it's like I'm still like a skateboarder or something, when I was a kid, like tearing up structures or something, like.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it feels like with these black and white ones though, that because the red ones have more of a painterly aspect to them.
Right.
Even though there is kind of wash with these,
yeah,
and a layering, it feels like these kind of stay within a certain structure, and you don't have that kind of, you don't have any kind of drips or any kind of, any of those qualities.
Right.
Is the black and white, did it have, I guess, some kind of, I mean, obviously, yeah, it seems like you saw it differently in terms of how it worked, even though you were using color, you were using paint.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that your earlier comments about seeing like all of the structure kind of remaining, the evidence of that, it's still apparent in the transparency of the drawings. I think, and that's always been something that I really loved, and I think that I like the sort of, it has this structure, but I feel like it gives the surface this kind of liveliness. And I think that, in my paintings, just in the last, I don't know, like in the last 5 years, I've really been trying to like loosen the paint. The paintings used to always be like really, really tight. And I really, really love the color interaction. But everything, I think with the paintings, remaining really tight, I started to feel like everything felt really fixed into place, and I was losing, I think, some of the sort of depth and the kind of movement that was evident in the drawing, and I was trying to recreate that in paint. And so I, like, little by little, I started sort of just like letting paint kind of behave like paint wants to behave, and I do. It's still like I'm still kind of painting within the lines, but I'm also allowing these sort of drips and bleeds to happen, where I used to sort of clean all that stuff up and I just sort of like let it go. And I think that there's and then another difference between, like, I think that I like the kind of liveliness of the drawings, but I still feel like drawings are, and one of the ways I think about drawings, it feels more kind of schematic or kind of diagrammatic, whereas and it's sort of like the structure of the paintings, but I feel like the color, like they really kind of become alive with paint, and paint seems to lend this sort of this kind of pulse, or like a kind of a body to the structure, and so they were just kind of perform in different ways, I guess. But again, I feel like I need to sort of maybe explore that structure and kind of maybe find the drawing and find the forms in a different way, and then I'll go back to I'll make this decision. I'll get to a certain point and I'll make this decision, like, okay, these next whatever 10 pieces are going to be paintings.
What's interesting, what I find interesting is that there seems to be some of the quality. It's almost like the the kind of spilling and the line and the running from the paint seems like the line work takes the place of that with these in a way.
Right, exactly. With the drawing, you're saying. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's you know, it's cool, and I think that that's one of the things that just in this sort of like in the behaviors, like in the end, like what I'm choosing to sort of like leave or edit. You know, I think that you know, some of that transparency that are like in the black and white pieces, and it's even like in the works on paper. They have this, you know, again, they kind of, in a way, they feel kind of very schematic and sort of without this sort of idea of a body around it. And another, I think, a way that sort of open space kind of happens more in the painting is where I'm kind of allowing these sort of drips and bleeds to happen, and then I'm like, as the paint kind of builds up, and they're still very thin, but they're like multiple layers of like thin paint. All those drips get kind of trapped in between areas where I've let it run, and then other maybe lines, mostly where you can see it, where they become kind of overpainted. And that has this real kind of like expansive effect on the paintings. So it's doing it like where you get this, you have this sort of transparency of the graphite and all the kind of multiple layered lines where that's still left visible in the drawings. I think you're getting it in a different way in the paintings, how it happens in paint. So yeah. I mean, I think those differences are really critical in how they kind of exist.
Yeah. I mean, and you mentioned you know, the two different classes of drafting and art, and like, I mean, did you consciously bring the structure from drafting? Like, do you remember like that was a conscious decision, or?
I think that. Yeah, you know, I think that when I started building these works just purely out of line, I was making a more direct reference to the landscape, and I think that that's a big part of the content of the work. It has a lot to do about I think it has a lot to do with just self-exploration, and I don't ever really stress that idea about identity, but it has a lot to do with like, sort of filtering the world through my experience. So it really is about identity. So early on, I was just sort of like looking for the structure, and the work that I've been making probably for the last 20 years, they're always horizontal rectangles, and so there's still this sort of vague allusion to landscape painting, or not, not necessarily the natural landscape, but the world that we live in. And so at some point, I think I was just looking. I think that maybe some of the like kind of curvy organic lines were becoming almost too like individually assertive, and so I was looking for something that I don't know, was just a bit more systematic and made in a way like maybe more efficient. And I thought, and actually there were kind of patterned lines that were coming into the work where I was using straight edges, and so I decided to do one where it's just I got out my T-square, I got my drafting instruments, and I'm like, I'm just going to make one with all straight lines. And the very first one that I made, I was halfway through it, and I was thinking, this is not going to work. And as I stuck with it, and I ended up kind of totally like going in that direction. So yeah, so there's I think yeah, I mean, I again, like even within this I like the kind of uniformity of the line, and I like that. But I like that I'm still. I think in the bio, I kind of describe them as being this kind of really kind of like rigorous drawing structure. But then there's this. It's like I'm kind of looking for this sort of like, I don't know, emotional or like very like visceral response in the work. So, and it's another part about that too is like I think my titles often refer. I think all of these are like it's sort of a loosely based group. It's like I don't know, what did I even call these, like revised and updated map drawings. So they're kind of directly referring to sort of the landscape. And as much as I'm using this kind of sort of like rational process, I'm really kind of, I don't know, I really kind of, when I think about a title or like what they remind me of, I start thinking about sort of places, or I might have I might be thinking of like, I don't know, like a mountain or something, or like the beach or something. I start thinking about, places that we kind of, that we live in, that we inhabit. And then a lot of times the titles come from that.
It's interesting what you just talked about in terms of referencing landscape.
Yeah.
I mean, and also, referencing maps, and it's just interesting to see the work as a kind of, I mean, if you think about landscape painting and then mapping, and
right,
it's kind of like like almost a way of plotting the landscape.
Sure. Yeah.
And then the work in a way is taking the idea of landscape and rationalizing it in a way that's very structured. So the paintings live almost somewhere between, a very organic, like rural kind of like, or wilderness,
right,
a very urban designed
right,
place.
Totally.
And then this idea of mapping and this kind of way of understanding like the landscape,
Yeah.
and it just sort of exists in those two.
Sure. Yeah.
Places. I mean, are you looking at a lot at mapping and like and those kinds of?
I mean, I'm interested in drawing. Like, I'm interested in all kinds of like process of drawing, and I love architecture. That you can, an architect could design a building here in Miami, and it could be built in, in Los Angeles or something. And so the idea of like, again, it becomes like, using scale like that and scaling something down. I'm really interested in the idea of languages like that can take you can take an abstract idea and we can use these, and I talk a lot. I mean, I think I briefly kind of touched on that, like on the brief statement that, we all use various types of systems in our personal lives and our professional lives too. And, whether it's like some kind of charts or, it's even just making like a shopping list or something when you go out. It's just a way to like kind of, it's just a way that we can kind of just manage information. So yeah, I think I mean, I love maps. I think that, I resisted getting a smartphone for a long time, and I remember I used to like love. I would go visit friends in New York, and I loved having my like New York City street, like my little flip map, and I would, my friends were like scrolling on their phone trying to find directions, and I'm, yeah. So I miss that actually.
I find the phone easier, although I kind of loved reading maps. I was kind of good at it, but
I do too, and I love that. On a phone you're like scrolling around, and I love that I can open a map up and I can see. You can see an overview of the whole thing. I love that. I kind of miss that. I was actually looking at an atlas, like a U.S. road atlas, not long ago. It's on my wish list. I need to buy a new one.
And you know, I like thinking about this whole, you know, premise of systems, because I feel like every artist kind of finds their own system.
Sure. Yeah.
And you know, and I mean, I can relate to that in a sense that, like, I mean, you've created this sort of language and system that you function within, you know, and you explore and investigate it.
Yeah.
It's almost like, you know, science has certain, you know, systems, certain languages that it uses within certain disciplines to sort of explore.
Right.
And the whole process of exploring is it can be a very creative process, but it's
absolutely
it's a very challenging process. And
yeah.
to have tools and structures in place to explore things kind of just gives you some kind of direction to begin, or guides you in the journey.
Absolutely.
I mean, for me, like, and I, you know, just thinking about like my work, like through so many years of just, and for me, one of the most frightening things early on was abstraction.
Yeah, yeah.
I felt like it was so, it was just so, it was like, where do you begin? And I think we talked about this before, where it was really frightening. And I feel like the whole process of sort of throwing oneself into abstraction is like finding what that system is.
Yeah.
And it could be an emotional system, a system of identity, a system of, but it's like the themes and the things that you want to explore, and that's your system, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I kind of went on like, you know, a journey to find that system.
Yeah.
And now in a way, it's kind of like, I mean, and I really believe for like the way that I see work, and what I really love in work is a response to the purity of systems.
Right.
Because in my work, I respond to what the materials are.
Right.
And what they're telling me within a set of materials that kind of create my language that I'm interested in working with and exploring.
Totally. Yeah.
And I just kind of respond to the materials, and that kind of builds something visual that I feel has a kind of a purity that doesn't feel so designed.
Right.
Or so like, because I don't know, I find it boring when I see things that are absolutely incredibly resolved. And it's like,
exactly.
oh, done, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I get it. That's why these marks are there, you know?
Right. Right. Totally.
And that I find that incredibly boring. And I feel like you have this system, and you build the system, but then within that system you kind of respond to, and so how much of it do you find yourself pulling away from making, you know, aesthetic decisions, and do you allow yourself to respond to the system as you're working and building on it?
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, like I say, I think that I kind of just starting out and just filling the space up with all these lines, it kind of gives me this sort of foundation to stand on. But then, yeah, I go back and you know, I essentially just erase the entire thing. And like particularly with those black and white works, you see all the sort of drawing that's kind of pushed into the background a little bit. And that's sort of the first sort of initial erasure that happens after all this drawing. So then I go back, and it really is kind of like kind of like an abstract expressionist thought or process where I'll just kind of start and like, okay, I'll pull this line. I start sort of pulling lines forward at that point, and I'll just sort of redraw one line and then think, okay, I'll draw a line here. So, yeah, I mean, there's and again, the system kind of like it sort of just helps me out along the way, and I don't really feel like I get. It helps me through, I guess, if I kind of reach, if I'm stuck in a spot, it just sort of helps me to just kind of keep moving forward and kind of resolve it. And so, yeah, I mean, the material doesn't really change so much, but I have, yeah, I mean, I've just got this whole, pile of lines that I'm kind of standing on top of and just kind of, pulling them forward. So yeah, I mean, even, and like I say, I think that, kind of beyond that, with each piece, I think I sort of find, like, I'll kind of identify, like, maybe like a little formal arrangement, and then I might start looking for, like, it just might be a little section of the composition. And then maybe I might start trying to kind of, in a weird way, like maybe trying to sort of repeat that. But I mean, as fixed as it is, I think I do, I'll almost dream up like a little bit of a creative process that I guess kind of helps me along. That's, yeah, I don't know, just a very intuitive thing that kind of helps me along as well, that I'm just responding to the drawing that I'm seeing. And it's not, and I don't like it to be so absolute where it's, like where you're saying, where things get sort of fixed and they're sort of final and that's how it's going to be. And again, I think earlier, I think the paint, what I talked about earlier when I was making the paintings and I was sort of keeping all the edges very clean and all the color very clean, they just felt really and I like those earlier works, and I love the color to them, and I love the sort of interaction of the color, but they feel very sort of fixed in place. And I wanted to, as I moved along, I wanted something to become more, that just breathed more, that felt more alive, that allowed things to, to kind of interact a bit more. That was kind of an ongoing movement that.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned, so we talked about process, and I want to go kind of outside of process, and where do you come to the work from a autobiographical standpoint or a historical standpoint,
right,
outside of process? And you mentioned landscape, and obviously there are art references that you can go into if you wanted to, but I'm interested also in just the work, beyond the process and the structure and the formal issues, like what is it about, or landscape, or what is it outside of those things that what's going on in there, or in respect to those things, whether it's the self, whether it's what motivates you to kind of do the kind of work that it is, and how you kind of arrive to it.
I think that that's, I mean, that's just a really important point about the work. And I think, in school, I guess through art history, when we were kind of learning about like an abstract language, I think that I love the idea that it could be something, that art could be something that was open to various interpretation, and that's why I wanted to, I think particularly in art school, we all kind of, I guess, for professors to keep us all on the same page, we all sort of draw from life, and as just a way to kind of, everyone sort of like learning together. But as I was learning more in art history, I really just responded in a really good way to the idea of this kind of open, and more of an open language. But yeah, I think that the development of the work that I'm making now, it's come about through like a really long process of trying to find out, exactly, or just trying to define as clearly as I can, what are the things that interest me. And I think one of the things that I was kind of, when I started working this way, I think one of the things that I was so kind of excited about initially with just using line and filling line up, filling the spaces up with line, is that it kind of, I think it started to sort of touch on, I guess a way that I think like, I guess kind of philosophically, and this idea that it's that it kind of reveals, if you sort of look at the work and study it a little bit, and you have this sort of like line that moves in a straight path, and it's, you know, each line, although it might be moving at a different angle, you start to read how it has this somewhat limited behavior, right? And you can start to sort of decipher how the line is able to interact with each other, and it becomes this kind of woven piece of fabric. So within that, there's this sort of idea that I like, that it's this sort of very like kind of honest. There's this kind of honesty about the language, and it's sort of displaying this sort of idea of an abstract language, but it's something that is being it's kind of built out of its own structure. So it's this sort of like truthful representation. So I guess that, I was excited about that because I don't know, it just relates to I don't know. There's this kind of like overall, I don't know. They're just sort of like things that I was trying to like, truths that I was trying to like learn about the world and learn about myself. And so, the art started, like kind of functioning that way for me as well. But yeah, like kind of what are those ideas, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I have, I say that like I'm so interested in like the language of art because it's one of the things that I guess kind of like I'm interested. I talked earlier about this idea of using systems and how people and how we use systems in our personal life and how we use it in our professional life. But it's like I think this sort of like just this visual language is just the thing that kind of makes sense to me. Like I wish that I understood. I wish I understood, science and politics and, and the economy. I wish I were more clear about all of these things. And maybe the way that people work in those fields and how they use their systems that help them to get their mind around just a way that they can sort of learn and function better and more efficiently. And I guess like visual art was just something that I was just always interested in these sort of ideas about beauty. And I always thought that it was just kind of an absurd thing to think about, but I don't know. It's just something that, I mean, I guess as after I finished school, I just thought like, well, why not? I mean, I should just, if I'm going to invest my time in something, I would rather create works of art rather than, I don't know, like work on the stuff or something, like
there's so much energy in the work.
Yeah.
And and what's interesting about, and I think about that is when I'm looking at it, there's just so much energy in the work. And but then when thinking about the process, it's I don't know, it kind of fascinates me that it conveys that energy and the process is so not about that. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
The process is very methodical and very it's a long methodical process. It's, I would say it may be also somewhat meditative, maybe.
Sure. Yeah.
But yet when you look at it, there's just this incredible amount of energy and almost even aggression too, and like like explosion or like a collapse or like a I mean, and so it's just I love and I'm fascinated by the fact that those two opposing forces, are present.
Yeah.
There's this very kind of methodical process, and then there's just this incredible amount of energy that you get from looking at the work and from being in front of the work.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think that, I mean, there's a lot of minimal art, and I think that a lot of artists that work in these very kind of just kind of these very sort of sparse, kind of very direct language. And I don't know. I think that that I don't know. I think that I'm again, I mentioned like beauty, but I was always interested in reading things about like ideas about like the sublime, and the having something that had like seeing something that had like this really you would have this kind of real sort of visceral reaction to, and so I think that I wanted the paintings, and I always tended to really, again, like with abstract painting, I really was always particularly drawn to these painters that would just sort of fill the surface, and I like and I mean, I guess I just like that sort of energy about it, like that everything is like completely filled up, and yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy and chaotic on the one hand, but again, I think in a way, when I look at them, I think that, I mean, I feel like I like that they have this energy, this kind of explosive, dynamic energy, but I see them, I guess, because it's again, like sort of creating these things out of using a system. I think, well, they're all quite simple as well. That it kind of builds into all of this, all this energy. And
yeah, I mean, but I feel like there's a simplicity to there's a simplicity to any chaos.
Yeah,
you could break down the simplicity of matter,
right?
And it's just a very simple makeup.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it does have a kind of it can have a complexity to its overall presence on certain levels, but there is a kind of simplicity to the makeup of it. I was just thinking of the work. I was just thinking of looking at this piece as also kind of like a really close cross section of like static or something that is,
oh yeah, totally.
And what's interesting is that the white washes over it create these kind of subtle like these sort of subtle like wave.
Yeah, exactly. There's I started, I mean, this is the really large one. I think I started treating those again, this sort of what I think of kind of areas of erasure, but I was really, I was just painting over them with gesso, and I was almost using, it was funny, like I was almost looking at the drawing underneath. I was almost sort of painting those out using like I was almost kind of like painting grids, and then just sort of like completely like brushing it over, which is just a way, I guess, to handle like just a kind of a larger expanse of space. Because I don't often, I mean, every once in a while I'll make a really large piece like this. This one's like 7 by 10 feet, I think, 80 by 120. So it was just again, I think it's just a way to, I'm always, I think, trying to come up with ways to sort of like, I don't know, just to manage the work as I'm making it. So,
and you and I remember we got into a really great conversation about at least a painter that I love, Cy Twombly. That and what's interesting is this is in terms of like energy and like that intensity on the canvas.
Yeah.
But they're like exact opposites.
Right.
On many levels.
Right.
I mean, both the color work and this. I mean, they're still like a complete opposite, but but I feel like there's a connection of that kind of energy, that kind of like, I mean, in his way, it was a kind of stream of consciousness, like kind of aggressive mark making, ring of things. In this case, it's like I mean, it's a similar energy, but yeah, again, like I said before, just completely like opposite in a way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's every once in a while, I think. Again, I mentioned something about skateboarding. I mean, I grew up like surfing and skateboarding when I was a kid, and I think that one of the things I was always kind of attracted. I always loved graffiti art, and it's funny that that you mentioned Cy Twombly, and once in a while, someone they'll see a painting or a drawing, and they'll be like, oh, it kind of reminds me of graffiti. I think that that's kind of really funny, but I never, again, I guess kind of part of my personality, like I don't think I would ever go out and like deface a building, or I would be like, I shouldn't do that. And so I guess I like having I need a surface. It needs to be somewhat contained for me.
Yeah.
Like, I can like attack that and sling paint all over it, but I don't want to, yeah. I need, I need the sort of freedom. I need the sort of structure, but then I need the kind of freedom too. It's so, yeah, I mean, painting and drawing, it kind of provides that. So the surface.
Earlier you mentioned Luc Tuymans, and the color painting behind you. Like it's I don't know, just some parts of it remind me to just some of his sort of like loose style.
Yeah.
And really, like I'm thinking like, oh, like these paintings, at least the color work. That,
yeah.
You have like this kind of mix between Luc Tuymans and like this very kind of structural. Minimalist artist.
Yeah.
Combined.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, I think that, I mean, again, I guess like his work is just so layered with information and history and the research that goes into. I mean, I don't know, like he's someone that I've known about for a long time, but I have just been looking at a little bit more recently. And it's yeah, I mean, he's a really, really terrific painter, and I love that. I guess some of these things, I don't know. I mean, I guess if you know some of the history about the subjects that he's taking on, you can, I guess, or sort of understand some of the imagery. But I like that it's really kind of mysterious too, and he does it in a way that's very, it's very intriguing. Like you want to investigate it. It's like, why this choice, and why is something framed like that? And it's really interesting. But I love, you look at the work and you go up to it, and he's also, I think, just a really terrific painter. Like I love that the image is just kind of, they just really sort of dissolve into brush marks, Yeah. So it's like I like that it you can sort of look at it through different levels, and it sort of works on so many different levels. So he's terrific. I mean, he's somebody that I'm reading a little bit more about, or just one of the artists. So.
Well, I want to thank you for joining me. And,
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's been fun.
And it was really great to really have that show in the space. So
I think so too.
Great show. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks so much, and thanks for your support. I really appreciate it. And it did. The show looked really, you're really terrific, and I really appreciate all of your help from you and Francis both. So it's been the insight and the bit of collaboration has been really incredible. It's been exciting to me. So yeah.
Awesome.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks. And I'm gonna sign off with a few things, but appreciate you, Chris, and take it easy out there. Stay safe.
You too. Yes. Yeah.
Don't stress too much over the craziness.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Hopefully, that things won't get out of hand. That COVID will be somewhat not so. This spike won't be so bad. I don't know. We don't know what to expect from that. So, and then hopefully all the ballots will. We'll know something about our new president soon.
All right. Well, thanks, man.
Thanks, Layton. Yeah. Talk with you soon.
All right. Bye. So that that's us. That concludes our talk. I really appreciate everybody who came on to see our conversation with Chris. I just want to thank our uh, sponsors, the Knight Foundation, the Warhol Foundation, Light Arts, the state of Florida, and Miami-Dade County Department of Cultural Affairs for all of their support. And just wanted to let everybody know that we still have things going on in our digital gallery, and we're working on a group show that will be opening this December. So you'll see stuff about it soon, and we'll see you next time. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you on the other side of everything that's going on. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.